The great hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for miles. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, the crystals glowed a soft gold, the color of amusement and superiority. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in floating chairs, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some had scales, others had tentacles. A few were made of pure light, but they all shared one thing in common on this day. They were laughing. On the massive screen at the center of the hall, images from a small blue planet played in a loop. Wars, explosions, pollution, humans killing humans, cities burning, children crying in the rubble of destroyed homes. High Arbiter Velen stood at the podium, his tall gray body wrapped in robes of office. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd with satisfaction. He had ruled the Concord for 300 years, and in all that time, he had never seen such unity among the species. Nothing brought the galaxy together quite like looking down on someone else. "Observe," Velen said, his voice carrying through the hall like music. "This is what the humans call civilization. They poison their own air. They drain their own oceans. They build weapons to destroy each other, and then they wonder why we do not welcome them into our great family." The laughter grew louder. A representative from the Vex Collective, a being made of swirling gas, spoke up. "Perhaps we should give them another 1,000 years. Maybe they will learn to stop hitting each other with rocks by then." More laughter. The crystals in the walls glowed brighter. Far away on the small blue planet called Earth, Admiral Park Jun-ho stood in silence. He was watching the same broadcast. Every human with a screen was watching. The Concord made sure of that. They always broadcast these meetings to Earth. They wanted humans to know their place. Jun-ho was 60 years old, but he looked older. His hair had turned white from stress, not age. His eyes held a tiredness that sleep could never fix. He had spent his entire life serving humanity, first as a soldier, then as a commander, and now as the Supreme Admiral of Earth's small defense force. A force that was never allowed to leave Earth's orbit. A force that existed only because the Conquered found it amusing to let humans play with ships. The council chamber around him was quiet. The other members of Earth's government sat with their heads down. Some were crying. Others were shaking with anger, but no one spoke. What was there to say? They had heard these insults 1,000 times before. For 200 years, humanity had lived under the boot of the Galactic Concord. When humans first reached the stars, they had been so hopeful. They thought they would find friends among the cosmos. Instead, they found masters. The Concord had taken one look at human history and declared Earth a restricted world. Humans were too violent, they said, too primitive, too dangerous to be allowed into civilized space, and so Earth was quarantined. No human ship was allowed past the moon. No human was allowed to trade with other species. No human was allowed to leave their own solar system. But the restrictions were only the beginning. The Concord sent observation teams to Earth. These teams took whatever they wanted: technology, resources, people. Thousands of humans disappeared each year, taken for experiments that the Concord never explained. When Earth's leaders protested, the Concord simply laughed. What could primitives do against the greatest civilization in the galaxy? Then came the embargoes. Earth was denied access to medicines that other worlds took for granted. Diseases that the Conquered could cure in seconds killed millions of humans. When Earth begged for help, Velen himself responded. "Perhaps," he had said, "if you learned to stop fighting each other, you would have time to develop your own cures." 3 billion humans died in the first century of contact. 3 billion, and the galaxy did not care. Jun-ho turned off the screen. He could not watch anymore. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. A rage he had carried for 40 years. A rage that every human carried, passed down from parent to child like a dark inheritance. The doors to the council chamber burst open. A young officer ran in, her face pale with horror. Jun-ho recognized her immediately. Lieutenant Yuna, one of his best. She was breathing hard and there were tears streaming down her face. "Admiral," she said, her voice breaking. "Taurus, the colony on Taurus." Junho felt his heart stop. Taurus was humanity's secret hope, a small moon at the edge of the solar system where 3 million humans had built a hidden settlement. It was not much, but it was theirs. A place where humans could live without conquered eyes watching them. "What happened?" Junho asked, though some part of him already knew. Yuna could barely speak. "They found it. The conquered found it. They said it violated the restriction. They said humans were spreading like a disease." She fell to her knees. "They killed them all, Admiral. 3 million people. They called it pest control." The chamber erupted. Council members screamed in grief and fury. Some collapsed. Others beat their fists against the walls, but Junho stood perfectly still. Something inside him had finally broken. No, not broken. Something inside him had finally been set free. He walked to the center of the room and raised his hand. Slowly, the chaos quieted. Every eye turned to him. "For 200 years, Junho said, his voice calm and cold, we have begged, we have reasoned. We have turned the other cheek until we had no cheeks left to turn. We have watched our children die. We have watched our people disappear. We have swallowed every insult, every humiliation, every act of cruelty. And for what? So that they could laugh at us while they murder 3 million innocent people." He looked around the room, meeting every gaze. "They call us primitive. They call us violent. They say we are not worthy of the stars." His voice grew harder. "Perhaps it is time we showed them exactly what primitives are capable of. Perhaps it is time we reminded the galaxy why they feared us in the first place." The room was silent. Then slowly Yuna rose to her feet. Her tears had stopped. Her eyes were hard now, filled with the same fire that burned in Junho's heart. "What are your orders, Admiral?" she asked. Junho smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Contact Dr. Minyu. Tell him to wake up Project Phoenix. Tell him the silent years are over." That night, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, lights flickered to life in places that had been dark for a century. Machines that had waited patiently began to hum. Ships that had been built in secret started their engines for the first time. Dr. Minyu stood in the control room, surrounded by screens showing humanity's hidden strength. Weapons the conquered could not imagine. Technology born not from peace, but from 200 years of quiet, burning hatred. He pressed the activation button and whispered to himself, "They wanted monsters. They should have been more careful about what they wished for." Above him, the ocean began to glow. 6 months had passed since the massacre on Taurus. The galaxy had already forgotten about it. 3 million dead humans was not even worth mentioning in conquered news. Just another footnote in the long history of keeping primitives in their place. But Earth had not forgotten. Earth would never forget. Captain Yuna walked through the construction bay of humanity's largest secret shipyard. It was hidden inside an asteroid that had been hollowed out over 50 years. From the outside, it looked like just another rock floating in space. Inside, it was the birthplace of humanity's revenge. The ship before her was beautiful in a terrible way. It was black as the void between stars, shaped like a blade made for cutting through the heavens. Its name was painted on the side in letters of burning red: Defiance. Yuna placed her hand on the cold metal hull. This ship was her home now. Her old life was gone. Her daughter had been on Taurus, visiting friends when the conquered came. She had been 7 years old. Yuna had not even been able to bury her. There was nothing left to bury. "She is ready," said a voice behind her. Yuna turned to find Dr. Minyu approaching. The old scientist looked tired but satisfied. He had spent his entire career building weapons in secret, always hoping they would never be needed. Now that they were needed, he worked without sleep. "The shields," Yuna asked. "Better than anything the conquered has. Their weapons will bounce off like raindrops on glass." "The weapons?" Minyu smiled grimly. "Let me put it this way. One of our cannons can do what their entire fleet cannot. We did not build this ship to fight, Captain. We built it to end fights." Yuna nodded. Around her, thousands of workers moved with purpose. They were engineers, scientists, soldiers, and ordinary people who had volunteered for the most important job in human history. Many of them had lost someone to the conquered. All of them were ready to die. On the other side of Earth, in a desert that had once been part of Korea, General Hana watched her soldiers train. 10,000 men and women in powered armor moved across the sand like metal giants. Their footsteps shook the ground. Their weapons made the air crackle with energy. Hana was small compared to her soldiers. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She was 65 years old, and she had been fighting since she was 15. The conquered had tried to take her once, during one of their observation missions. She had killed 3 of them with her bare hands before escaping. That was 40 years ago. She had been preparing for this moment ever since. "General," her aide said, running up to her, "Admiral Junho is on the line." Hana walked to the command tent and activated the screen. Junho's face appeared, looking older than the last time she had seen him. The weight of what was coming showed in every line on his face. "How are your soldiers?" Junho asked. "Hungry," Hana replied. "Hungry for blood." "Good, we launch in 3 days. I need your forces ready to board the transport ships." "They have been ready for 50 years, Admiral. We all have." Junho was quiet for a moment. "Hana, I need to ask you something. When this begins, there will be no going back. The conquered will throw everything they have at us. We may not survive." Hana laughed, and it was a sound without joy. "Junho, my grandmother was taken by the conquered when I was a child. My parents died from a disease the conquered could have cured with a single pill. My husband was killed in a raid 20 years ago. I have been dead inside for decades. Now I finally have a chance to mean something. Do not ask me if I am ready. Ask me how many of them I plan to take with me." Junho nodded slowly. "Then may the stars have mercy on them, because we will not." In a small village on the coast of what was once called Busan, Lieutenant Doyun sat with his grandmother. She was 90 years old, her body frail but her mind sharp as ever. She had lived through the worst of the conquered's cruelty. She had watched her world change from a place of hope to a place of despair. And now she was watching her only grandson prepare to leave. "You do not have to go," she said, holding his hands in hers. "You are young, you have your whole life ahead of you." Doyun shook his head. "What life, grandmother? A life of bowing to creatures who see us as animals. A life of watching friends disappear and pretending it is normal. That is not living. That is just waiting to die." His grandmother was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stone. It was worn smooth from years of handling. "This belonged to your grandfather," she said. "He carried it through the first wars before the conquered came. He said it brought him luck. He said as long as he held it, he would always find his way home." Doyun took the stone and pressed it to his heart. "I will come home, grandmother, I promise." She smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "Come home with your shield or on it, but come home, my boy, come home." Far across the galaxy, in the great capital of the conquered, Ambassador Tella waited outside the High Arbiter's chamber. She was different from the other conquered species. Her people had once been conquered, long ago, before they proved useful enough to be accepted. She knew what it felt like to be looked down upon, and she knew something else that the conquered had forgotten. Desperate species were dangerous species. Finally, the doors opened and she was allowed inside. High Arbiter Velen sat on his throne of living crystal, surrounded by his advisors. He looked bored already. "Ambassador Tella," he said, "I assume you are here to waste my time again." Tella bowed her head respectfully. "High Arbiter, I come with a warning. The humans have been too quiet since Taurus. Our sensors have detected unusual energy readings from their planet. I believe they are planning something." Velen waved his hand dismissively. The humans are always planning something. It means nothing. What can they do? They are trapped in their own system, playing with toy ships while the adults manage the galaxy. With respect, High Arbiter, you have not studied their history as I have. These are a people who split the atom and then used it as a weapon. They walked on their moon less than a century after learning to fly. They are reckless, inventive, and they do not know when to quit. One of the advisors laughed. They are primitives, barely evolved animals. Tella felt her frustration rising. Animals can still bite, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous of all. Velen leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing. Enough! I grow tired of your obsession with these creatures. The humans are nothing. They have always been nothing. They will always be nothing. This discussion is over. Tella bowed and left the chamber. As she walked through the crystal halls, she felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. She had done everything she could. Now she could only wait and hope that her fears were wrong. They were not. 3 days later, the skies above Earth split open with light. 1,000 ships rose from hidden bases across the planet. From the dark side of the moon, another 500 emerged from where they had waited in shadow for decades. The fleet gathered in formation, a swarm of black blades against the stars. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Spirit of Earth. Around him, screens showed the faces of his captains, his generals, his soldiers. 200 years of pain and rage, focused into a single point. He opened a channel to the entire galaxy. Every screen in conquered space flickered and changed to show his face. "This is Admiral Park Junho of the United Earth Fleet," he said, his voice steady and cold. "For 200 years you have told us we are nothing. You have starved us. You have stolen from us. You have murdered our children and called it justice. We asked for peace. You gave us death. We asked for mercy. You gave us mockery." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are done asking. We are done begging. We are done being your victims. You wanted monsters. You wanted savages. Congratulations. You have finally created them. We are coming. And we will not stop until the galaxy remembers why it should have left Earth alone." He cut the transmission. The fleet began to move, jumping into hyperspace one ship at a time. The stars blurred, and humanity went to war. Commander Raxus had served the Galactic Concord for 150 years. He had fought in 12 wars against species that had dared to challenge conquered rule. He had never lost a single battle. His fleet was the finest in the galaxy, 200 ships crewed by the best soldiers the conquered could train. When the order came to deal with the human rebellion, Raxus had laughed. This was not a mission. This was a vacation. He had seen the data on human technology, primitive, outdated. Their ships were slow, their weapons weak, their shields laughable. This would be over in hours. His officers shared his confidence. As the fleet approached Varen Station, a conquered outpost on the edge of known space, they joked about what they would do with the humans they captured. Some talked about keeping them as pets. Others suggested selling them to collectors who paid well for exotic species. "Commander," his sensor officer said, "the human fleet has just arrived at Varen Station. 1,000 ships." Raxus smiled. "Only 1,000. I expected more," said attack formation. "Let us show these animals how real soldiers fight." The conquered fleet moved into its standard pattern. 200 ships formed a perfect wedge, shields overlapping, weapons locked on target. It was a formation that had broken 100 enemies. It would break these humans as well. But something strange happened. The human ships did not form a formation. They scattered across space like leaves in a storm. They moved without pattern, without logic. The conquered targeting computers could not predict where they would go next. "What are they doing?" Raxus asked, frowning at his screen. "Unknown, Commander. Their movements make no tactical sense." "Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand proper combat," one officer suggested. Raxus nodded. "Fire at will, end this quickly." The conquered weapons blazed to life. Beams of blue energy lanced across space toward the human ships, and then something impossible happened. The beams missed. Not some of them, all of them. Every single shot passed through empty space where human ships had been a moment before. The humans moved like ghosts, like shadows, like creatures made of chaos itself. "Fire again," Raxus shouted. More shots, more misses. The human ships danced through the barrage like they could see the future, and then they began to fire back. Raxus had never seen weapons like these. Red bolts of energy that burned through conquered shields as if they were not there. Missiles that split into 100 smaller missiles, each one finding a different target. Beams of pure white light that cut ships in half with a single touch. The first conquered ship exploded 3 minutes into the battle. By 5 minutes, 30 ships were gone. By 8 minutes, Raxus had lost half his fleet. "Retreat," he screamed. "All ships retreat." But the humans did not let them retreat. They followed, they hunted, they killed. And leading the charge was a ship as black as death itself, the Defiance. Captain Una sat in her command chair, her face calm even as her ship tore through the enemy fleet. Around her, her crew worked in perfect silence. They did not cheer when they destroyed a ship. They did not celebrate when enemies died. This was not a game to them. This was not sport. This was justice. "Captain," her weapons officer said, "enemy flagship identified. Commander Raxus's vessel." Una's eyes narrowed. "Targeted all batteries. I want that ship gone." The Defiance turned toward Raxus's flagship like a predator spotting wounded prey. Raxus watched it coming on his screen, and for the first time in 150 years, he felt true fear. "Shields to maximum," he ordered. "All weapons fire on that ship." His fleet, what remained of it, focused everything on the Defiance. A wall of energy slammed into the black ship. The screens flared white with the impact. When the light faded, the Defiance was still there, still coming. Its shields had not even flickered. "Impossible," Raxus whispered. Lieutenant Doyun flew through the battle in his small fighter. Around him, his squadron hunted down fleeing enemy ships. His hands were steady on the controls, his mind clear and focused. Every target he destroyed was another step toward justice for Taurus, for his grandmother, for every human who had ever been taken by these monsters. An enemy ship tried to run. Doyun followed. It fired at him, but he twisted through the shots without thinking. His grandfather's stone was in his pocket, warm against his leg. He felt like he could not miss. One shot, the enemy ship exploded. "Good kill, Lieutenant," his squad leader said over the radio. Doyun did not respond. He was already hunting the next target. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Raxus watched as the Defiance approached. His weapons were useless. His shields were failing. His crew was panicking around him. "Commander, we must surrender," his first officer begged. "Perhaps they will show mercy." Raxus shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. We have spent 200 years teaching them what mercy is worth. Nothing. They will show us the same mercy we showed them." The Defiance fired. The beam was so bright that Raxus had to close his eyes. He felt his ship shake, heard the metal screaming as it tore apart. And in that final moment, he understood what Tella had tried to tell them. He understood what the conquered had created. Then there was only light, and then nothing at all. The Battle of Varen Station lasted 11 minutes. 200 conquered ships reduced to floating wreckage. 0 human ships lost. It was not a battle. It was a message. Admiral Junho ordered the aftermath recorded and broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. The footage showed the debris field, the twisted remains of what had been the finest fleet in conquered space. It showed the human ships floating peacefully among the destruction, untouched and unharmed. Junho appeared on screen, his face grave. "Varen Station was a warning. We did not start this war. You did 200 years ago when you decided that human lives had no value. Now we are going to teach you the price of that mistake." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was ice. "There will not be another warning." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. The Conquered had never lost a battle like this. The Conquered had never lost a battle at all. In the great capital, High Arbiter Velen sat in his throne room, staring at the screen with all four eyes. His advisors had fled when the first footage arrived. None of them wanted to be near him when he saw what had happened. "How," he whispered, "how is this possible?" Ambassador Tella stepped out of the shadows. She had stayed behind, waiting for this moment. "I tried to warn you, High Arbiter. I told you they were dangerous." "Dangerous?" Velen's voice rose to a scream. "They destroyed 200 ships in 11 minutes. Their weapons tore through our shields like paper. This is not dangerous, this is impossible." "And yet it happened." Tella walked closer, her voice calm. "You never read their history, did you? You never learned about their wars." "We watched their wars, primitive conflicts with primitive weapons." "You watched them fight each other," Tella said softly. "You never considered what would happen if they decided to fight someone else. When humans fight among themselves, they hold back. They have rules, limits. They worry about destroying their own planet." She leaned in close. "When humans fight an enemy they truly hate, they have no limits. They invented something called total war. It means they do not stop until one side is completely destroyed. It means they will sacrifice everything, suffer anything, endure any horror to win." Velen's face had gone pale. "What have we done?" Tella straightened and turned to leave. At the door she paused and looked back. "You created an enemy that cannot be reasoned with. You cannot scare them because they have already lost everything. You cannot starve them because they are used to hunger. You cannot threaten them because they no longer fear death. You taught them that the galaxy wants them dead, and now they have decided to fight back." She walked out, leaving Velen alone with his fear. Outside, the stars burned cold and indifferent, and somewhere in that darkness, the human fleet was already moving toward its next target. 18 months had passed since the Battle of Varen Station. The galaxy had changed. For 10,000 years, the Conquered had ruled without challenge. Now their empire was burning. General Hana stood on the surface of a conquered world, watching her soldiers raise the flag of United Earth over a shattered conquered fortress. This was the 12th planet she had liberated. 12 worlds freed from conquered control. Millions of beings who had lived under tyranny now looking at humans not with fear, but with hope. It had surprised her at first. When her troops landed on the first conquered colony, she expected everyone to fight. Instead, she found that most of the population had been conquered themselves. Species who had been absorbed into the conquered centuries ago, who had never known freedom, who had been told that resistance was impossible. Then the humans came. Small, fragile-looking creatures who fought like demons and refused to die, who broke through defenses that had held for 1,000 years, who looked at the oppressed and said, "You are free now. Fight with us or run, but you will never be slaves again." Many chose to fight. Hana's communication device buzzed. She answered and saw Admiral Junho's face on the screen. He looked tired, but there was something like satisfaction in his eyes. "General, excellent work on Tarvos. I am moving the fleet to support the next phase." "Thank you, Admiral. The locals here are already organizing resistance cells. They want to join our cause." Junho nodded slowly. "We are not conquering, General. Remember that. We are liberating. Every world we take is a world that can choose its own future." "I know." Hana looked around at her soldiers helping wounded civilians. "That is what makes us different from them." In the cold darkness of space, Captain Yuna led her fleet in a different kind of mission. While Hana took worlds, Yuna cut supply lines. She hunted conquered cargo ships, destroyed fuel depots, and blocked the routes that kept the conquered military fed and armed. The conquered had built their empire on efficiency. Everything connected. Everything depended on everything else. It was their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. One broken link damaged everything. Yuna broke hundreds of links. She stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching another supply convoy burn. Her crew had become ghosts of the void, appearing from nowhere, striking without mercy, vanishing before help could arrive. The conquered had started calling her the Black Widow. She did not mind the name. "Captain," her sensor officer said, "another convoy incoming. 12 cargo ships, escort of 6 warships." 6 warships, Yuna smiled without humor. They are learning they used to send 2. Orders. Same as always, disable the warships, capture the cargo, let the crews live. She paused. We are not monsters, we just need them to believe we are. On the conquered capital world, High Arbiter Velen had not slept in weeks. Every day brought new reports of defeat. Worlds lost, fleets destroyed. The humans were everywhere and nothing could stop them. He had tried everything. He sent his best commanders against them. They died. He built new weapons based on captured human technology. The humans countered them within days. He ordered secret attacks on Earth itself, hopping to destroy the source. The assassins never came back. Now he sat in an emergency meeting with his few remaining advisors. The room that had once held dozens was nearly empty. Most had fled or been arrested for failure. "We must use the world breakers," Velen said. His voice had lost its musical quality. Now it sounded harsh and desperate. His advisors looked at each other nervously. The world breakers were the conquered's ultimate weapons, missiles that could destroy entire planets. They had never been used because they were too powerful, because even the conquered had some limits. "High Arbiter," one advisor said carefully, "if we destroy Earth, we do not defeat the humans. We simply make them desperate, and desperate humans." "I know what desperate humans do." Velen slammed his fist on the table. "I have watched them tear my empire apart for 18 months. What choice do we have?" "Surrender." Everyone turned. Ambassador Tella stepped into the room, uninvited. Velen's guards moved to stop her, but she ignored them. "Surrender," she said again. "Open negotiations. Offer them what they want. End this before there is nothing left to save." Velen laughed bitterly. "Surrender to primitives. The conquered has never surrendered. We will not start with animals." "Then you will die." Tella's voice was flat. "I have studied them, Velen. I have read every record of their history. Do you know what happens when you corner a human? When you threaten everything they love, they do not give up. They become something else, something worse." She walked closer to the table, her eyes never leaving Velen's. "Right now, the humans are still fighting a limited war. They are liberating, not exterminating. They are capturing, not killing. They could burn every world in their path, but they choose not to. Do you know why?" No one answered. "Because they are still hopping for peace. They are still fighting for justice, not revenge. But if you use those world breakers, if you destroy their home, you will kill that hope. And then there will be no limit to what they do." Velen stood slowly. "Get out of my sight. Guards, arrest her." The guards moved forward. Tella did not resist. As they dragged her away, she called out one last time. "You cannot win a war against people who have nothing left to lose." The doors closed behind her. Velen turned to his remaining advisors. "Prepare the world breakers, target Earth. We end this now." But they would not get the chance. Somewhere in the endless dark between stars, Lieutenant Doyon led his squadron toward the most important mission of the war. Intelligence had discovered a conquered weapons facility, hidden in an asteroid field. Inside were the launch codes for the world breakers. Doyon's hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was racing. If they failed, Earth would die. Everyone he loved would die. His grandmother, sitting in her little house by the sea, would die without ever knowing what happened. He touched the stone in his pocket. His grandfather's stone. Come home, his grandmother had said. Come home. Squadron, this is Lieutenant Do-yun. We have one chance at this. Follow my lead. They dove into the asteroid field like needles through cloth. Enemy ships spotted them immediately. Alarms screamed. Weapons fired. The space around them became a storm of energy and rock. One of his wingmen exploded, then another. Do-yun kept flying. Lieutenant, we cannot make it through, someone shouted. There are too many. Do-yun saw the facility ahead. He saw the enemy ships forming a wall between him and his target. He did the math in his head. 3 of his pilots left. Dozens of enemies. Not enough time to fight through. He made his choice. All ships retreat, he ordered. I will handle this alone. Lieutenant, that is suicide. No, it is necessity. Do-yun pushed his ship to full speed. Tell my grandmother. Tell her I kept my shield. He cut the radio. The enemy ships turned to face him. They fired everything they had. Do-yun flew through the fire like it was not there, his hands moving on instinct, his eyes seeing paths that no computer could calculate. His ship was hit, once, twice. Systems failed, alarms screamed. He did not slow down. The facility loomed ahead. His weapons were offline. His shields were gone. Only his engines still worked. Do-yun smiled. It was enough. He aimed his ship at the heart of the facility. At the last moment before impact, he whispered a prayer to ancestors he had never known. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a new sun. The facility, the launch codes, the world breakers, all of it vanished in a ball of fire. On Earth, in a small house by the sea, an old woman woke from sleep with tears on her face. She did not know why. She would not learn the truth for 3 more days. But when she did, she would not cry again. She would stand straight and proud, and she would tell everyone who would listen about her grandson, the boy who saved the world. Far away, Admiral Junho received the news. His fleet was already moving toward the conquered capital. The enemy's final weapon was gone. There was nothing left to stop humanity now. He bowed his head for a moment, honoring the young pilot who had given everything. Then he looked up at the stars. It is almost over, he said quietly. Almost. The conquered capital world had been beautiful once. Towers of living crystal stretched toward the sky. Gardens floated among the clouds. It was a monument to 10,000 years of dominance, a symbol of power that had seemed eternal. Now it burned. The human fleet filled the sky like a swarm of dark stars. Ships that had crossed the galaxy to reach this moment hung in silent formation, weapons aimed at the heart of an empire that had once called them animals. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of the Spirit of Earth, watching the screens. He could see the capital city below, lights flickering as systems failed. He could see the conquered defense fleet, what remained of it, forming a desperate line between the humans and their home world. It was not much of a line, maybe 50 ships against 1,000. The battle would be over in minutes if he gave the order. He did not give the order. Open a channel, he said. All frequencies, let everyone hear this. The communication officer worked quickly. Within moments, Junho's voice was reaching every corner of the conquered capital, every ship in both fleets, every being watching this moment unfold. People of the Galactic Conquered, this is Admiral Park Junho of the United Earth Fleet. For 200 years, your leaders called us savages, animals, primitives not worthy of a place among the stars. They took our resources, our people, our children. They laughed while we suffered. They mocked us while we died. He paused, letting the words settle. We could destroy you now. We have the power. We have the right. Every death you caused, every insult you delivered, every child you stole gives us the right to burn your worlds and salt the ashes. Your own laws say that conquered species can be treated as property. By your own standards, you belong to us now. On the surface below, billions of beings listened in terror. They knew human history now. Everyone did. They knew what humans did to enemies they hated. They waited for the fire to fall. But we are not you. Junho's voice softened. We did not fight this war for revenge. We fought because we had no choice. We fought because you left us nothing else. We fought because sometimes the only way to be heard is to scream loud enough to shake the stars. He took a deep breath. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to enslave you. We want something you never gave us: respect, equality, a seat at the table that was denied to us for 2 centuries. Give us that and this war ends today. Refuse and we will take what we came for by force. The choice is yours. The channel closed. Silence fell across the fleet. Deep beneath the capital city, High Arbiter Velen cowered in his bunker. His guards were gone. His advisors had fled. He was alone with his fear and his failure. The door opened. General Hana walked in, her boots echoing on the crystal floor. Behind her came a squad of human soldiers in powered armor, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Velen pressed himself against the wall. "Stay back, I am the High Arbiter. I am the voice of the conquered." Hana stopped in front of him and looked down. She was so small compared to him, this elderly woman with gray hair and tired eyes, and yet he had never been more afraid. "You are nothing," she said quietly. "You are the leader of an empire that no longer exists. You are the voice of a people who have stopped listening. You had 10,000 years to build something good, and instead you built a machine for crushing anyone weaker than yourself." She pulled a small device from her belt and placed it on the table between them. "That is a communication link. In 5 minutes, you will use it to order your remaining forces to stand down. You will announce your unconditional surrender. You will tell your people that the war is over." "And if I refuse?" Hana smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not kind either. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much to be moved by threats. "Then you will spend the rest of your life in a cell on Taurus, on the moon where you murdered 3 million innocent people. We have rebuilt it, you know. Not as a colony this time, as a memorial. Every name of every person you killed is carved into walls of black stone, and you will walk past those names every day until you die." Velen's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, his 4 eyes wide with horror. For the first time he truly understood what he had done, not as strategy, not as pest control, as murder, as evil. "I will surrender," he whispered. "Please, I will do whatever you want." "We know you will." 4 hours later, the war officially ended. Velen gave his speech, his voice shaking. Conquered forces across the galaxy put down their weapons, and on every world that had suffered under conquered rule, beings looked up at the sky and wept with joy. The days that followed were busy ones. Captain Yuna traveled to the rebuilt colony on Taurus, where a memorial had been erected for the 3 million dead. She walked among the black stone walls, reading names until she found the one she was looking for. Her daughter, 7 years old forever. She placed a small photograph at the base of the wall. In the picture, a little girl was laughing, reaching for something outside the frame. It had been taken the week before the massacre. "We won, baby," Yuna whispered. "We won, you can rest now." She stood there for a long time, and for the first time since the war began, she allowed herself to cry. Not tears of grief, but of release. The weight she had carried for so long finally began to lift. Admiral Junho spent his final days in uniform building something new. He proposed a galactic union where every species had an equal voice, where no one could be declared inferior, where the weak were protected instead of exploited. Many expected him to lead it. He refused. "I am a soldier," he told the gathered representatives of 100 worlds. "I know how to fight wars. I do not know how to build peace. That task requires different hands than mine." He looked across the room and found Ambassador Tella, the only conquered official who had tried to prevent the war. "I nominate Ambassador Tella as the first leader of the new Galactic Union." She saw what was coming when no one else would look. She spoke for peace when speaking for peace was dangerous. She is what the galaxy needs now. Tella accepted, humbled and surprised. In her first speech as leader, she made a promise that would guide the new union for centuries to come. We will never again judge a species by its past. We will never again dismiss the weak as worthless. We will remember what happened when one small world was pushed too far, and we will build a galaxy where that never has to happen again. 20 years passed. The scars of war slowly healed. Trade routes that had been closed reopened. Species that had been enemies learned to be neighbors. Children grew up in a galaxy that was not perfect but was better than before. In the mountains of Korea, in a small academy built on the site of her old training grounds, General Hana taught the next generation. She was old now, her hair pure white, her body weak. But her mind was still sharp, and her voice still carried the weight of everything she had seen. A young student, a child of the insectoid species that had once served the conquered as slaves, raised a limb. "General Hana, I have a question." "Go ahead." "Why did you fight so hard? Your species was small. Your world was one among billions. What made you believe you could win?" Hana was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the mountains her ancestors had called home for thousands of years. "Because we had no choice," she said finally. "When someone tells you that you do not deserve to exist, you have two options: accept it or prove them wrong. Humans have never been good at accepting." She turned back to face her students, beings from dozens of different worlds, all learning together. "But there is something else, something harder to explain. We were not fighting because we hated the conquered. We were fighting because we loved each other, our families, our friends, our world. Love is not a weakness, children. It is the strongest weapon in the universe. It will make you endure what hate never could." On a balcony overlooking a peaceful city, an old man watched ships from 100 worlds pass through the sky. His name was Park Junho, and he had not held a weapon in 20 years. His hair was gray, his face lined with age, his body tired from decades of service. But he was content. For the first time in his long life, he was truly at peace. A small boy ran onto the balcony, his great-grandson. The child tugged at Junho's sleeve and looked up with bright, curious eyes. "Grandfather, is it true what they say, that you saved the galaxy?" Junho knelt down slowly, his old knees protesting. He looked into the boy's face and saw the future, a future worth fighting for. "No, child. Humanity did not save the galaxy. We simply reminded it of something important." He pointed at the ships above, at the aliens and humans traveling together in peace. "We reminded them that the smallest flame, if ignored long enough, can become an inferno, and that inferno can either destroy everything or light the way to something better." He put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "We chose the light. We always choose the light. That is who we are. That is what it means to be human." The boy smiled and hugged his great-grandfather. Above them, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. But Junho knew that darkness would not last. It never did. Tomorrow the sun would rise again, as it always had and always would. And somewhere in that vast galaxy of stars and wonders, the children of Earth would continue their journey. No longer victims, no longer slaves, no longer primitives. Just humans, doing what humans did best. Surviving, hopping, and refusing to give up.